All right, so what I wanted to make a video today about basically transference of strength training, weight room to sport, or the separation of the two and the combination of the two, and more specifically in regarding to a question I received from one of the parents. I don't know if it was so much a question or a concern, but one of our kids that plays baseball, his pitching coach was concerned with his breathing as he was throwing the ball and wanted me to watch him while he was working out, etc., etc. So, just a little bit of general background information first. When you're talking about getting a big mistake that you could fall down, you could go down a huge rabbit hole, is trying to make everything you do in the weight room or training-wise specific, like super specific to the sport that you play. That's a huge problem. You got to think of them almost as two separate things. And as you become more and more advanced at the super advanced levels, you could try to get closer, more specific. But again, you're never going to get you're never going to be able to become specific in strength training, right? It's almost like you got to think of it as two separate things. You're trying to build the base. You're trying to build stronger muscles. You're trying to build the athlete in here, and then you're trying to use those You're trying to use that body that you develop here in your sport to become better at your sport. So we're trying to become more athletic, stronger, more resilient, all those things in here, and then try to take that to the sport that you're trying to play, right? So it's almost two different things. You can't there's no way to mimic running in the weight room. You just don't. You could build up your hamstrings, you could build up your calves, you could train the muscles to work. You could try to train them to work like as fast as they do when they run, but you're just not going to be able to. The body's moving too fast when it's running to be able to transfer the two things, to kind of blend the two things together. The closest thing, if you wanted to do strength for running, the closest thing would be like sleds, okay? But again, that's too slow to carry over to all-out sprinting. So again, you could build up the muscles, so we could build up the legs, you could build the calves, hamstrings, abs, all the things that you need to run fast with good mechanics, you could build them up. But in terms of the same holds true for all the sports across the board. You can't mimic throwing in the weight room. It's just not going to happen. You could build up, we know what we need to do to become better at throwing, but you can't really do throwing in terms of strength training. It's not going to happen. They need to have stronger abs, stronger obliques, shoulder muscles, internal and external rotators, traps, triceps, the muscles that extend the elbow. So all those things, doing wide stance deadlifts and squats to be able to laterally push the ground apart, all those things should carry over to throwing, but again, we're actually not throwing when we do them. Okay, so to get into, now I got that out of the way, to get into the actual breathing when you throw or when you lift and do different things, let me get into that a little bit. Now, typically what happens is when you are throwing, I'm not a throwing expert or a pitching coach, so I'm not going to really get into that. And I never try to get into sport-specific techniques with the kids. I stop at basically sprinting and jumping. That's basically as far as I go. So I'm not going to be able to get into the mechanics of throwing. But when we lift something heavy, we do what's called a Valsalva maneuver, or we try to create as much inter-abdominal pressure as possible. I did a whole video on weight belts and creating inter-abdominal pressure little ways back, and I think it was last winter. And what you're trying to do is you're trying to breathe into your stomach and create pressure when you lift something really heavy. If I told you you had to go and lift up, you've never lifted this bar before and it's really heavy, you have to go and lift it up, you would get down and you would probably go, take a deep breath in and then lift it, right? That's how you lift something heavy, okay? The same thing goes when you jump. When I jump, I'm not going to, the old way of, you see a lot of people think, make sure you breathe when you work out. That's actually not true. If you're doing a lot of reps, let's say we're doing 12 reps. We might go 3, 4, and now we're actually breathing at the end there. But in the beginning, you're actually holding your breath to start the movement. And then what you're going to do is when you do something heavy for 1 rep, you're going to hold your breath. So I equate throwing, swinging the bat, jumping, sprinting, all that to like almost, that's maximal intensity. That's going to be more like doing 1 rep in the weight room, right? So if I'm going to jump as high as I possibly can, I'm going to take a deep breath in, and then I'm going to jump, and I'm not going to exhale probably till I land. The same thing when I sprint. I'm going to get up in a sprinter stance, I'm going to take a deep breath, and then I'm going to be out, and a couple steps in, or maybe 10, 20, depending upon the athlete, then I'll breathe out. Same thing goes, I would think, for throwing. So as I throw, it's going to be like if I'm going to throw the ball, it's going to be like and then I'm going to exhale after I release it. You are not going to do it's slow. It slows the body down, right? You lose your inner abdominal pressure in your tension, which gives you the ability to create power and force. And then when you exhale, it's actually slowing you down too, right? So if you were to swing a bat, the same thing would hold true. You're here in your stance, and before you actually swing that bat, that ball is coming in. You're going to be right? You're not going to do this. Okay? So when we're talking about training and trying to tie it all together, when we're talking about training, the first thing we need to do when we train is we're trying to get as strong as possible. Okay? So we're going to use any type of breathing technique that we can to get as strong as possible and keep us the safest as possible. So that's why you hold your breath, because you have you're locking all this in, this inner abdominal pressure, 360 degrees around, from your spine all the way around. You're locking that in, and you're lifting. That's what keeps you from breaking your back. Okay, so creating inner abdominal pressure is what keeps your posture, keeps you from getting injured in your back. So, that's why we do it like that when you lift. And that actually carries over to a lot of different sporting activities where you're going to hold your breath. You're not going to exhale through it. Now, obviously, if you're running a 400-meter dash or a mile or something like that, you're going to have to breathe at some point. But in terms of just a short burst of sprint, you're probably not going to breathe much while you're doing that. Same thing with jumping. Same thing with throwing, batting, all those things. All these things that are short burst, high intensity, short burst things, it's going to be more of a hold your breath type of action. So it's not a hold your, and again, I went through this with the weight belt video, but it's not a hold your breath like this. It's like that. My abs flex. So if you can see through the shirt a little bit, boom, I'm flexed. Boom, not like that. So that's just my explanation of all that stuff. If we're doing a little bit higher reps, so 10 reps or so, obviously at the end you're going to be breathing with your reps because it's moving slower too. Again, if you're going to lift something fast, you can't breathe through it. You can't exhale through it. The movements happen too fast, and you need to have too much tension in your body to do it.